When you open the software, you will be presented with the main home screen, which is this screen here, where we have quick access to a number of features, including the Favorite Apps bar, as well as some of the more commonly used menu items along the bottom here. Starting with Applications. Clicking on Applications will bring up a list of the standard 40 applications that come with Magic Eye Effects, as well as any other applications that have been added or created. Any apps that you've created in this section, any recordings that you've made here. Here you can enter the app builder where you can actually create your own content. This is the App Store, which is currently unavailable at the time of this video, but it will be launched very soon, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And over here we have the gaze menu. We'll take a quick look at the gaze menu. This will be explained in a separate video. However, it's handy to know what it is and what to do if you enter it and can't get back out. So if we click on gaze menu, that's going to change the entire UI to a more gaze friendly one with different options and features. If we want to get back to the home screen, we're just going to click on settings and come over to the right here where it says exit to home, and that's going to take us nicely back to the home screen. Along the top bar here we have a search option, so if you're looking for a particular app, you can just begin entering the details and you'll find it'll start calling up any apps that relate to that search. And just to the right of that we have the control panel where you can find the main controls for apps as well as recording settings. Now this section is really intended for use in tablet mode. So for instance, if you're using a separate mobile device with our mobile app on, an Android or iPad, for example, this panel will be available on the app. So while apps are running, things can be changed. So you can stop running an app here. We can toggle sound on and off, as well as turn sound up and down. We can also begin a recording. If you are working with a user and you'd like to capture what's happening in the moment, you can click recording and that will initiate a recording session until you decide to stop. When you do decide to stop, this button will have turned into a stop button, so you can press that to halt the recording. And just over here we have the recording settings. So if recording is enabled, then you will be able to affect these settings. So a brief introduction into the recording settings here. We have the ability to record camera as well as apps. So for example, when working with a user and recording an app in play, we can also record any cameras that are attached to the device. So typically that might be a integrated webcam. So you can decide whether you would like to capture that, yes or no, and which camera you would actually like to use. So you choose the one you'd like to use, and that will begin recording that when you start recording an app. This is quite a handy feature when it comes to analytics, because not only do we get to see the in-app interaction of the user, but we also get to see things such as facial expressions or other things that are going on in the environment at the time. So that's quite a handy feature. As well as the camera side of things, we have audio, so we can change the audio settings here, whether we have mic sound or game sound, and obviously choose which microphone we'd like to use. And then here we have the ability to change the size of video recordings. Depending on the length of the recording, you can imagine the file sizes can become quite hefty. So as standard, we have a medium file size set, but if you're looking to do high quality stuff, then you can change that to 100% full HD, or you can even go right the way down to quarter size as well if you want it to be more in favour of file size. Here we can use text to speech, and here we can show play and record. Play and record is quite a handy feature if you want to be able to run an app and record at the same time. For example, if we click on an app and bring up the pop-up, we find the title of the app, we find a description of what the app's all about. Obviously, we can play it here, and that's it. There's nothing else. However, if we go to recording settings and show play and record yes, then the next time we open an app, we'll have the red play and record button down on the bottom right. This is handy if you know you're going to do a recording before you do it. That enables you to run the game and record at the same time until the app is exited. And over to the right, if you look for the 3 lines on the top left of the screen, clicking on these opens up the side menu. So from top to bottom, we have the login area. So by default, we are logged out. If you are logged in, that's going to essentially mean that any recordings that you make will appear in the My Recordings section. If you then log out, they will disappear from the My Recordings section. So the idea behind this is that you can create an instructor account, and then you can create various sub-user accounts. So if you're working with multiple people, you can log them in and then create any of their recordings there and then, and that will put them into the My Recordings section. If you decide later you want to go and have a look at someone else's recordings, you can just log into their account, and that's going to bring up their recordings in this section here. Home just simply takes us back to the home screen. Applications takes us to the full list of applications that exist on this version of the software. Media library takes us to this incredibly useful tool for content creation. So in here we have hundreds and hundreds of image files, sound files, video files, as well as cursors for custom cursors and animated GIFs. And each category is also then subdivided. So for instance, images, we have background images, so anything we wish to use for an entire background scene, as well as foreground images, which sits over the top of the application, acting as a mask. Object images for any objects that we would like to interact with within the app, and we have PCS symbol options here as well. Same with sounds. We have background sounds, which are typically longer, more musical, or background sound effects. And then we have object sounds, which are actually much shorter sounds, and they're intended for use when interacting with objects for that short, sharp cause and effect type sound. We also have videos, which are typically used for backgrounds. They can add a nice dynamic effect to your content creation, as can the GIFs as well. These are mostly going to be used for objects, but they can add a nice little bit of flavour to the app that you're making. You can, of course, upload media too. So just clicking on Upload Media File is going to bring up a browser window where you can then enter your own media into the media library for later use. My apps will be where any of your content is created. My recordings, any recordings you've made will go here. The app builder, which again there will be a separate video on this, so keep your eyes out for that. But that takes you into the section where you can create custom apps with a complete endless array of options. Store is, as I mentioned earlier, not available at the moment. We're just currently launching that, so keep your eyes open for that. That will be here soon. Analytics is a separate piece of software that we've designed, which is intended for use with recordings that you've made. So once you're ready to check out the the details and data of some of your sessions, you can click on Analytics. That's going to open up a separate piece of software where you can see all of the in-game play, as well as any camera feeds that have been recorded at the same time, and a whole host of data. Gaze menu takes us to the gaze menu. About will just give you a little bit of info about who we are and where we are, and the ability to contact us. Anything interesting that you may have that you'd like to say to us, feel free to fill out the form and hit send. And onto the config settings. These are essentially the main UI and eye gaze settings for the software, where we can change the language of the user interface, as well as the graphics settings. Now, graphics settings relate to the hardware that you're using. So, for example, if you're using a PC with a dedicated graphics card, then you're going to want this set to best quality, which is going to ensure all features are active, including recording. If, on the other hand, you're using a PC that doesn't have the graphics capabilities, then you're going to want to set this to best performance. That's going to reduce a lot of the software overheads, as well as make recording inactive, so be aware of that. Down to the eye gaze settings, we have switch activation key options. So these are the switch keys for use when in the gaze menu view. Now there's another separate video on gaze menu, so look out for that. However, if you want to change these, you simply click on the arrow, bring up the list, and add any keys that you wish to use. In-app dwell time can be set here globally, so if we click on this list here, we can choose from a range of dwell times to suit each user. Once we select from this menu, it's going to change all of the games globally, meaning that any app that you run is going to have that dwell time in it. That said, you can bring up our off-screen access menu within the app in runtime and manually select the dwell time on the fly. So it can also be individually set. The off-screen access menu in-app is invoked by looking down to the bottom right of the screen whilst an app is running. So by doing this, you'll bring up the menu, which has a whole host of interesting and useful settings that can be changed on the fly. And these can be done by gaze and also by voice. If you find that the menu is being called inadvertently, i.e. your user is inadvertently looking at the bottom right of the screen and bringing up the menu too much and it's becoming a distraction, then we can turn that feature off by selecting inactive. That means now you can't bring up the menu by gaze. However, you can still operate the menu by F7 and F8. Either of those keys will toggle the access menu on and off. By standard, we have that set to active. Certain aspects of the menu can be controlled by voice, such as cursors, for instance. So if you want to change from cursor 1 to cursor 2, you can just call out cursor 2, and this will change it. Again, this is something that could potentially become a nuisance. If it does, then you can make it inactive here. So now that will turn the voice feature off. Gaze speed is another performance-related setting. So this, again, relates to the hardware that you're using. If you're using a fairly high-spec machine, then you should be changing the gaze to slow or medium slow, depending on your preference. This is essentially going to slow down and smooth the gaze movement of the cursor, making for a nicer overall experience. And conversely, if you're using a lower spec machine, then you may wish to set this to one of the two fast options, which is going to help speed up the cursor and make for an overall more functional experience. Here we have the custom switch inputs. So we have the option to use system or use custom. These switch inputs relate to apps. So, for instance, if you're using switches to interact with objects within an app, then you can set your own custom key values. By standard, Magic IFX uses space and return keys for switches. That is, if you're in an app and you would like to interact with an object, if you hit the space bar, that's going to interact with the object. If you set the switch to scan mode, then that means you will then have the space key to navigate between objects, and when you get to the one you want to interact with, you can then press return. If you would like to use other keys, or you have another switch set up that is already programmed to other keys, then here you can go to use custom, and you can choose from an endless array of any key that suits you. And this includes games controllers as well, such as Xbox controller. And then we have connect device. This brings up a QR code, and you'll notice it lists the IP address of the machine here as well. So providing the tablet you're using and the device you're using are both on the same network. If you pick up the tablet, i.e. mobile device, open the app, hit the connect device button, and that will bring up the option to scan QR code. There'll be a separate video on this, so watch out for that if you want to know more. But you simply hold up the mobile device to this screen and it will automatically connect.